Okay, so ready for a deep dive into a story that's as fascinating as it is tragic. You guys wanted to know more about the Byford Dolphin accident, and let me tell you, it's a chilling reminder of the risks people take in some of the most extreme workplaces on Earth. We're talking about the North Sea, the quest for oil, and the unforgiving power of nature.
Where the human body is pushed to its absolute limits, working at depths most people can't even imagine.
Exactly. We're talking about the Byford Dolphin oil platform, this massive structure built to tap into Norway's undersea oil reserves back in the 80s. Imagine, this thing was like a small city on the water, extracting natural gas from depths that would make even experienced divers think twice.
Yeah, the scale of these operations is incredible. We're talking depths where regular scuba diving just isn't feasible. The pressure down there is immense.
Which brings us to something that always gets to me, saturation diving. It's captivating and terrifying at the same time. Can you explain what that is and why it's necessary for this kind of work?
Well, imagine trying to breathe at the bottom of a swimming pool. That's the kind of pressure we're dealing with here, but magnified hundreds of times over. Regular air with all that nitrogen becomes incredibly dangerous at those depths. Divers would experience nitrogen narcosis. It's like extreme drunkenness, making it impossible to think clearly, let alone work safely.
And on top of that, you've got the danger of oxygen toxicity, right? I read somewhere that it can cause seizures even at shallower depths.
Absolutely. That's why they use a special gas mixture called trimix for saturation diving. It replaces some of the nitrogen with helium, reducing those risks and allowing divers to work at depth of hundreds of meters.
So the trimix helps them breathe down there. But what about coming back up? Even recreational divers have to worry about the bends if they ascend too quickly. How do these guys avoid that after spending so much time under such pressure?
That's the ingenuity of saturation diving. Divers actually live in a pressurized environment, a specially designed chamber on the platform for the entire duration of their work, often weeks at a time.
So they're basically living in a kind of underwater apartment.
Precisely. And the key is that the pressure inside their living chamber is carefully matched to the pressure at their working depth. Their bodies become saturated with the breathing gases at that pressure, meaning they don't have to go through that dangerous decompression process after every dive.
Wow, that's wild, but I can only imagine what that does to the human body.
It's incredibly demanding. They're constantly exposed to cold temperatures, confined to a small space for long periods, and the work itself is both physically and mentally grueling. In fact, the source you provided mentioned that these divers were making around $1,400 a day back in 1983, a testament to the high stakes and inherent danger of this profession.
$1,400 a day back then. That's something else. It really makes you appreciate the incredible resilience of the human body and the risks these divers were willing to take.
It certainly does. And as we'll see, the Byford Dolphin accident tragically underscores just how unforgiving this line of work can be, even with all the precautions in place.
It's true, and to really grasp what happened on the Byford Dolphin, we need to kind of paint a picture of a typical crew transfer. It was a routine procedure, but in that environment, even routine becomes risky. Okay, so walk us through it. How did they get those divers back to the safety of that pressurized chamber?
All right, so picture this. November 5th, 1983, you've got a team of 4 divers working at depth, right? 2 are in that pressurized chamber. We talked about their home base, basically. The other 2 are operating the diving bell, bringing 2 more crew members back up from a mission.
Sounds like a carefully coordinated operation. No room for error.
Exactly. The diving bell, still pressurized to match the deep sea, is guided back to the platform and connected to a chamber called the trunk. Think of it like an airlock, a way to move between 2 different pressure zones.
Gotcha. I'm picturing it. What happens next?
So the pressure in the trunk is gradually increased to match the pressure inside the bell. And this is crucial, of course, to prevent that sudden, dangerous pressure change we discussed earlier.
So far, so good. But something goes wrong.
Yeah, and this is where it gets really tragic. See, once the pressures are equalized, the next step is to open the inner door between the bell and the trunk. But before that can happen, a heavy-duty clamp on the trunk, basically a massive seal, needs to be closed and bolted tight.
To maintain that airtight seal.
Precisely. It's a fundamental safety measure. And this, we believe, is where the fatal error happened.
So one misstep in this intricate dance could have devastating consequences.
It seems that due to a communication breakdown, maybe noise on the platform, or just the fatigue that comes with that kind of work, that crucial clamp wasn't properly secured.
And the crew inside the control room, they didn't catch the mistake.
Sadly, no. They followed procedure, releasing the bell, assuming everything was secure. What happened next was, well, it was a disaster. Imagine the unimaginable pressure of the deep sea, suddenly unleashed.
The source we looked at described it as an explosive decompression. What does that actually mean for the people inside?
It would have been instantaneous, catastrophic. We're talking about a pressure difference powerful enough to crush a car. The nitrogen dissolved in their blood, kept in check by that pressurized environment, would have instantly turned back into gas bubbles.
Like shaking up a soda bottle and then popping the top.
Yeah, that's actually a good analogy. Except in this case, those gas bubbles become deadly, creating countless blockages in the bloodstream, stopping organs in an instant. The human body simply can't withstand that kind of rapid pressure change.
It's hard to even fathom. And what about the diver who was closest to the trunk when it happened? Helvig, right? His death was described as particularly, well, violent. Yeah, and it's just awful, right? Trying to imagine that moment for him.
It's hard to even think about. Tragically, Helvig was right there when it happened. The force of that decompression, we're talking tons of pressure, it actually partially ejected his body through that narrow opening of the trunk door.
Just hearing about the physical devastation, it's impossible not to think about the human cost. 4 lives lost in an instant.
It really puts the spotlight on the risks inherent in these extreme environments. Even with all the procedures, the meticulous planning, human error is still a factor, and the consequences can be absolutely catastrophic.
It makes you think about the mental strength it takes to do this kind of work, knowing that one small misstep could have such horrific consequences.
You're absolutely right. The mental fortitude needed for saturation diving, it's often overlooked, you know? The isolation, the constant awareness of the danger, the pressure to perform in such a high-risk environment, it takes a unique individual to handle all of that.
And then there are the families of the men who were lost. The source mentioned that investigators found personal belongings scattered amongst the wreckage letters from home, photographs. Just adds another layer of tragedy to an already heartbreaking event.
It's true. It really highlights that these weren't just names in a report. These were fathers, husbands, sons, friends, people who dedicated their lives to a dangerous but essential job.
So after something this horrific, what changed? Did anything change?
Well, the investigation led to some immediate changes in safety protocols for saturation diving, especially around communication and equipment redundancies. But I think more broadly, it sparked a deeper conversation about the risks and rewards of this kind of work and the support systems needed for the people who do it.
And that's a conversation we're still having today across so many industries, right? How to balance progress with safety, how to protect the people who are pushing the boundaries of what's possible. For our listeners who are captivated by this story, and I know you are there any other resources you'd recommend?
Absolutely. Deep Descent, the story of saturation diving, gives a really comprehensive look at the development of this technology and the risks involved. And for a more personal perspective, there are a bunch of first-hand accounts from saturation divers out there that really give you a sense of the physical and psychological demands of this line of work.
I bet those are fascinating reads. This deep dive into the Byford Dolphin accident has been, well, it's been a stark reminder of the unforgiving nature of the deep sea, but it's also a testament to human ingenuity, our resilience, and our inherent desire to explore the unknown, even when it's dangerous.
Well said. It's one of those stories that stays with you, makes you think about the human cost of progress and the importance of being vigilant, respectful, and of course maintaining an unwavering commitment to safety in anything we do that pushes the limits of what's possible.